I used to think I was one of those people who could handle anything. You know the type. Single mom, 2 kids, still holding down a job and keeping it all together with duct tape and willpower. That was me. Or at least that's who I was before the tapping started. We just moved into the house that fall. A modest 3-bedroom ranch on the edge of a quiet Minnesota neighborhood. It had charm. Creaky floors, wood-paneled walls, and a big backyard for my kids to run around in. I remember thinking, this is our fresh start. The first time I heard it, I was half asleep on the couch. Just a soft tapping, like someone rapping a knuckle against drywall. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up, blinking at the dark hallway leading toward the kids' rooms. Probably the pipes settling, I told myself. Old house quirks. I didn't even check. But then it happened again. And again. It wasn't every night. That would have made it easier to track. Some nights were dead silent. Others, I'd hear it coming from the walls near the living room or, creepiest of all, from the floor vent in the hallway. I even joked to my son Tyler about it. He was 9 and brave in the way only 9-year-olds can be. Maybe it's a ghost, I told him with a smirk. He just shrugged and went back to his tablet. My daughter Ellie, 5 at the time, would sometimes say weird stuff like, "The wall man was whispering again." Kid stuff, right? Imaginary friends. I called an exterminator eventually. Told him I thought we had raccoons or something living in the walls. He came, looked around the attic, peeked under the crawl space, and declared the place clean. Probably just old ductwork expanding, he said. I wanted to believe him. Weeks went by. The noises faded for a bit, then came back with a vengeance. Now I was hearing scratching. The soft scrape of something dragging across drywall, like nails. Always at night. Always when the kids were asleep. And then Ellie said something that turned my blood to ice. We were brushing her teeth before bed, standing in that cramped little bathroom with the hum of the old vent fan buzzing overhead. She looked up at me in the mirror and said, "He watches me through the vent." I froze. "What do you mean, sweetie?" She pointed toward the floor vent in the hallway just outside her room. "The man. He hides in there and watches." I dropped to my knees and yanked the vent cover off. Just a dark shaft of ductwork, no sign of anything. I shone my phone's flashlight in, expecting, I don't know what. Eyes? A face? Nothing. I should have called someone then, but who? The cops? "Hi, my daughter says a man is watching her from the vent. Please send backup." So I did what scared people do when they don't want to admit they're scared. I ignored it. I screwed the vent cover back on and kissed Ellie goodnight. That night, I didn't sleep. Around 3:12 a.m., I remember the time because I'd been watching the glowing digits on my clock for hours. I heard the sound again. But this time, it wasn't just tapping, it was breathing. Long, slow, raspy breaths, like someone exhaling just outside my bedroom door. I sat up, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear. The house was dark except for the streetlight glow slipping in through the blinds. I strained my ears. Silence. I crept out of bed, every board beneath my feet creaking like a warning. The hallway stretched ahead like a tunnel, shadows stretching along the floor. I peeked into the kids' rooms, both asleep, safe. But when I walked past the hallway vent, I felt it. Cold air. Not just from the ducts, but a breeze, like someone was moving air toward me, breathing on me. That's when I really started losing sleep. The next day, I stayed home from work and started tearing the place apart. I pulled open every cabinet, crawled through the attic, even unscrewed more vent covers. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, that I was being a good mom. But really, I needed proof I wasn't losing it. And then, I opened the crawl space. It was in the back of the hall closet, one of those little wooden hatches you'd almost miss if you weren't looking for it. I had to move a bunch of boxes and old coats to reach it. When I finally pulled it open and shined my flashlight down, I almost dropped the damn thing. There was a blanket, a filthy one, balled up in the corner, a candy wrapper, a half-empty water bottle, a used tissue, and a notebook. I stared for what felt like minutes before crawling down. The space was barely 4 feet high, dirt floor, cobwebs everywhere. It smelled like mold and something sour, like sweat. I grabbed the notebook. The handwriting was shaky, childlike. Pages and pages of writing, all in pencil, most of it gibberish. But I remember one line repeated over and over again on the last page. She leaves the door open at 3. She dreams about fire. I like the pink one. I didn't scream. I don't know why. Maybe because it didn't feel real. Maybe because the walls felt like they were closing in. I backed out of that crawl space, slammed the hatch shut, and called the police with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. They found him 2 hours later. He'd crawled in through a vent access under the back deck weeks ago. Maybe longer. Lived beneath us, watched us, waited. The detective said it looked like he'd been inside the walls at night, listening, watching. They caught him coming back from a walk, just casually walking down our street like he belonged there. Middle-aged, disheveled, barely spoke, said we were his family. Said he only watched because the real world was too loud. I moved us out 2 days later. Left half our stuff behind. Sometimes I still wake up at 3:12 a.m. and stare at the ceiling. Listen to the silence and wonder if I missed something earlier. Some sign, some clue. I still hear Ellie say it in my head sometimes. He watches me through the vent. She doesn't remember saying it now. Kids are resilient like that. But I do. God, I do. It was the vest that convinced me. Bright orange with reflective strips, the kind utility workers wear on road crews. The man had a clipboard in one hand and a laminated badge clipped to his belt. He knocked on my front door just after lunch, while the sunlight was still warm and harmless across the front porch. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, giving me a tired, polite smile. "We're doing routine checks on power usage in the area. Could I take a quick look at your breaker box?" I hesitated. Not because he looked threatening. He didn't. He was mid-40s, maybe older, graying stubble, tired eyes. He looked like the kind of man who fixed things for a living. His work boots had dust on them. His clipboard had an actual checklist. It was everything else that made me pause. For one thing, I hadn't gotten a notice. Usually the electric company sends something in the mail, or at least an email. And for another, he didn't smell like sweat or copper. He smelled faintly like cologne, the kind a teenager might borrow from his dad. But I'd always prided myself on being reasonable. Cautious, sure, but not paranoid. So I nodded and stepped aside. "Breaker box is in the basement," I said. "Through the kitchen, door on the left." He smiled again, warmer this time. "Won't take more than 5 minutes, promise." He stepped inside. That was my first mistake. The basement in this old house has always creeped me out. Low ceilings, exposed beams, and that smell of cold concrete that never quite fades, no matter how many cinnamon candles you burn upstairs. The breaker box was mounted on the far wall, next to the laundry machines and a stack of bins full of baby clothes I couldn't bring myself to throw away. He didn't ask me to show him the way, just headed down the stairs like he already knew the layout. That was the second thing that made my stomach twist. I stayed at the top of the stairs, arms folded, listening. He flipped a few switches. The lights dimmed, came back. I heard the click of the panel opening, metal on metal. Then silence. Longer than 5 minutes. Long enough for the little voice in my head to speak up. "Something's off." I called down. "Everything okay?" No answer. I felt my heart crawl up into my throat. I took one slow step down, then another. He was standing perfectly still, facing the wall. The breaker panel was wide open, but he wasn't touching it. He was just staring at something on the shelf next to it. A photo of me and James from before the divorce, smiling. Beach day. He was holding it in one hand. "I asked you a question," I said, louder now, sharper. He turned, slowly, and for a second, I swear he looked confused to see me there, like he'd forgotten I was watching. Then he smiled again. Everything looks fine. Might just need a replacement soon, that's all. He placed the photo back on the shelf. Very gently. I backed up the stairs without turning around. When he left, he didn't offer paperwork. No signature line, no business card, no follow-up number. Just a quick, "You have a good day now," and then he walked off down the sidewalk. Not to a truck. To nowhere. I watched from the window until he turned the corner. Something in me had snapped past suspicion into full-blown dread. I called the electric company, spoke to a woman named Carla. "We don't have anyone in your area today," she said. I didn't sleep that night. I moved the couch against the front door and kept the TV on in the background like it would scare off ghosts. But ghosts don't disable alarm systems. 2 nights later, I woke up to the sound of the back screen door creaking open. It's a distinct sound. Our back door sticks in the frame and makes this wheezing eek when it moves. No mistaking it. I sat bolt upright in bed, my breath caught halfway between inhale and scream. My phone was dead. I'd forgotten to plug it in. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and crept out of bed, barefoot and shaking. The hallway stretched out like it always does at night. Too long, too quiet. The kitchen light was off. The back door looked shut. But when I reached out to test the knob, my blood froze. The deadbolt was unlocked. I never leave that unlocked. Someone had come in. And either they were still inside or they'd left without taking a thing. I stood there for a minute, listening. Heart hammering so loud I almost couldn't hear the whisper of breath coming from the hallway behind me. I turned. Nothing. But the hall closet door was cracked open. It's always shut. Always. I don't remember screaming. I remember running, grabbing my kids, locking us in the car. I remember the police, the sweep of the house, the officer's voice as he stepped out of the closet, holding a box cutter and a pair of gloves. "Ma'am," he said, "looks like someone was planning to come back." They didn't catch him. Not officially. There were no fingerprints, no forced entry, nothing stolen. But they found a coat and a hard hat stashed in the crawl space under the porch, right next to a paper copy of my electric bill, with my name and address circled in red ink. They think he'd been watching the house for weeks, posing as a worker, maybe to test alarms, get familiar, maybe even copy a key. That man had stood in my home, smiled at me, walked right past my family photos, and then planned to come back. I don't know what for. I moved a month later, sold the house to a couple from out of state. I didn't tell them about the man. I just told them the neighborhood had gotten a little too quiet. Even now, years later, I still flinch when someone knocks at the door in a uniform. I check for a truck. I call the company every single time, because it's not just horror stories or true crime podcasts. It's real. And sometimes the scariest monsters wear reflective vests and carry clipboards. You ever get that feeling? Like your house is watching you? Yeah, I didn't believe that kind of crap either, until I was 17 and home alone for a weekend that still creeps into my dreams 10 years later. My parents were out of town for their anniversary. First time in forever they trusted me to hold down the fort alone. No parties, no friends over, keep the doors locked, feed the dog. Easy. The house was nothing special. Just a standard 2-story in a quiet Chicago suburb. Big enough that it felt empty when you were by yourself, but not too big to get creeped out. Or so I thought. It started the first night. I was upstairs in my room, scrolling through garbage on my phone with the TV playing in the background. That's when I noticed something weird from the corner of my eye. This soft, pulsing light coming from the hallway. It was flickering. I stepped out and looked down the stairs. The basement light was on. Not just on, flickering, like a dying bulb. But the weird thing was, that light switch? It's inside the basement. The bottom of the stairs. You have to physically walk down into the dark to flip it. I hadn't gone down there all day. I figured maybe my dad had left it on when grabbing tools or something. No big deal. I padded downstairs, barefoot, annoyed more than scared. I stood at the top of the basement steps and called out, "Hello?" Just in case. Nothing but silence. Even the dog didn't bark. He was asleep in the laundry room, like he couldn't care less. I walked halfway down the stairs. The flickering bulb buzzed like a mosquito in my ear, and that's when I noticed the chain on the bulb swinging. Just a little, like someone had just pulled it. I turned it off fast and bolted back up the stairs. That's probably the first time I really felt it, that invisible pressure in the air, like something had been waiting down there. I tried to shake it off. Teen paranoia. I knew I'd be fine. This was my house. But the next night, it happened again. Around 11 p.m., I was in the kitchen grabbing a drink when I noticed the light under the basement door. A soft orange glow spilling through the crack. It wasn't flickering this time. It was steady, like someone had gone down there and turned it on intentionally. I walked to the door and pressed my ear against it. I swear to God, I heard breathing. Slow, like whoever was down there wasn't even trying to hide. I backed away slowly, heart hammering like a trapped animal's. I didn't have a bat or anything, but I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I could find and called the police. They showed up 10 minutes later. Of course, by the time they arrived, the basement light was off. They searched the whole house. Closets, crawlspace, garage. One officer even went into the basement, flicking on the light and walking around like it was just another Thursday. "Green as a whistle," he said. "Probably just an old wire or something." They were polite, but I could tell they didn't believe me. Thought I was some anxious kid spooked by shadows. Still, they did one thing that made me feel a little better. They checked all the basement windows, and sure enough, one of them, the one tucked behind the dryer, had scratch marks near the latch. Like someone had tried to force it open. That's when I stopped sleeping upstairs. For the next 2 nights, I crashed on the couch with the dog curled up at my feet and all the lights in the house on. I didn't care if it was wasteful. The darkness felt alive. But the last night, Sunday, was the worst. I woke up sometime around 3:30 a.m. The dog was whining softly, pacing near the kitchen, ears pinned back, and the basement light? It was on. But this time, it wasn't just the light. There were footsteps, heavy, uneven, like someone limping, dragging something. I stood frozen, still clutching that same knife. My legs refused to move. All I could do was listen. The creaking stairs, one at a time, coming up. Then silence. I gripped the handle so tight my hand went numb. I wanted to run out the front door. I really did. But some stupid voice in my head said, "You need proof. They'll never believe you otherwise." So I grabbed my phone and started recording. I crept toward the basement door. It was open this time. Just a few inches. Enough to see that buzzing orange light. I held up my phone, heart hammering, recording every second. Then I kicked the door wide open and screamed, "Get the hell out of my house!" Silence. The basement was empty. Completely. But when I went down there, slowly, every step a lifetime, I found something in the corner behind the water heater. A sleeping bag. Some empty food wrappers. An old water bottle. A Polaroid photo of me and my mom, taken years ago at the state fair. It was from inside the house. My blood ran ice cold. I called the cops again. This time, they didn't think I was making it up. They sent 2 cruisers and did a full sweep. Still no sign of whoever it was. But they did find scuff marks leading from the basement window into the backyard. Someone had been living in my house, in the basement. Watching me. Coming and going through the window. And that wasn't even the worst part. When I checked my phone later, the video I thought I recorded, it was gone. Not corrupted, not glitched, just not there. Like it had never been taken. I don't live there anymore. None of us do. My parents sold the place within a month and moved 2 towns over. Can't say I blamed them. For weeks after, I had dreams. Of the basement stairs, of the light coming on by itself, of someone standing at the bottom staring up, face hidden in the dark. Sometimes I still dream of him. Sometimes I wake up to my bedroom light flickering. And even now I can't be near basements. Can't stand that cold, dry smell. Can't trust any door left open. Because I know what lives in the quiet. And I know that light doesn't turn itself on.